Good evening and welcome back to the Awaken series part 21. When I was writing the email for this, I couldn't believe that we've completed 21 sessions. When JadeFire started the Awaken series, I thought it might be three, four, five. I definitely didn't think it would go into 21. But I am grateful for these series because I don't know about you, but I personally have learned so much through the series. And today we are looking at our immune system. And I really chuckled at this morning. I mean, JF gave me this subject way before we got to know of the number of our friends who have been laid low by the virus and our families. And I realized, I said, okay, JF timed it very well. But we're looking at our immune system in a very spiritual way. And JadeFire starts by saying we pay so much attention to our physical immunity and we take the right vitamins and minerals and we eat the right food, we exercise, some of us even meditate and do chanting, yoga, but we still fall ill. From time to time, something or the other, lays us low. And whether it's just a headache or whether it's the virus, something or the other is wrong with us from time to time. And he asks a very pertinent question that if your vitamins and your minerals and your exercising and eating good food was as important as you think it is, then why is it that none of these measures are able to halt, whether big or small, halt the physical problems that we go through? And he says it's erroneous to think of it in this way that, oh, it was only a slight headache that I had, or oh, my arm pained today and that's not such a big deal. Everything that happens to you, every point of pain, every tiny bit of physical discomfort is your body telling you that you are not in energy balance. And he says the reason why you're not in energy balance is that you've paid attention only to your physical immunity system because you do not know that you have two other immunity systems. And that is the emotional mental immunity system and the spiritual psychic immunity system. And I found that extremely interesting because I genuinely did not know that we had these two. And he says, just as you exercise and you take the vitamins and you nourish your physical body in order to keep the physical immune system strong, you have to do this constantly with the other two bodies as well. He goes on to say that just as every single human being has a higher self and our souls have a higher soul, our physical immune system also has a counterpart, which is of a higher vibration. But first of all, he says that within the physical system, there are two immunity systems. One is the physical immunity system, which fights the virus and the bacteria and other microorganisms that enter our body, whether it is through air, through food, through water, through contact. And the other immune system in the physical region is the emotional, mental immune system. Both these systems, he says, in actuality, work as one. You cannot distinguish between the two systems. It's just that the kind of virus or bacteria that affects the two systems are different, but they are so correlated to each other. They are so tightly associated with each other that you could actually say that they are one system. The counterpart of this system, which has a higher vibration, is the spiritual psychic system. The spiritual psychic system is very, very important. And I'm going to talk about this at length a little later. It's important because it keeps us away from energies of the lower realms. And JF says that if the spiritual psychic immune system is a weak one, you will be facing psychic attacks from people who mean you harm, but you could also face psychic attacks from the lower realms, energies of lower realms, energies of souls and spirits that are kind of caught in limbo, that have not been able to move entirely into the light, and all the rest of that. And so he says to keep yourself safe and protected. He says what each one does is you'll place a bubble of light around you. And he says that's fine. You can go ahead and do that. But that bubble of light will really not be effective if the spiritual psychic system is weak. Because what happens when the spiritual psychic system is weak is all the energies that you do not wish to associate with will take residence within you. And he says, when people talk of entities within the body, or that someone has been possessed by something, it is because the spiritual psychic system has become very, very weak. And he says the spiritual psychic system does not become weak unless it has to constantly battle a weak physical immune system and a weak emotional mental immune system. So it takes a lot for the spiritual psychic system to get weak. And he says you have a long time before this system gets weak so that you can actually start working to ensure that it's not getting weaker. JF says you really do not need to work on the spiritual psychic system at all. It will become as strong or as weak as its present condition is, depending on your physical immune system and your emotional mental immune system. If these two systems are strong, the spiritual psychic system cannot get weak. But if these two systems are weak, the spiritual psychic system gets weaker, and therefore the energies that come into us and take residence within us makes the two systems even weaker. And then it is very difficult to get out of that cycle. So JF says, just like the physical system, physical immune system is meant to battle and keep out all the bacteria and virus, the emotional mental system is meant to battle against the virus and bacteria of our emotions, our thoughts, our attitudes, our words, and our behavior. Now, this is so important. JF says, no matter what the circumstances, and he's made me write this in capital letters, if you want me to show it to you. No matter what the circumstances, you have to get into a habit of reacting positively. The reason is this: the emotional mental immune system is based upon, is founded upon the bedrock of our subconscious mind. And that's where the problem lies. If it was influenced by our conscious mind, we could have very easily made a conscious decision and choose our words with care. We could make a conscious decision to try to have positive thoughts. We could make a conscious decision to have a strong positive attitude. But that's not the case. The emotional mental system is based upon our subconscious mind. And it's called subconscious for exactly this reason. We are not conscious of it. Because we are not conscious of it, we are unable to have a control over it. In fact, just the reverse is true. The subconscious mind has a control over us. Now, when that happens, JF says, if you have a habit of automatic negative reaction, I want you to hear these three words with care: automatic negative reaction. Your emotional, mental, immune system will constantly be a weak one. JF says, yes, you can then come to a realization and pull yourself back and change your words and say sorry and change your behavior. But he says, do not forget that the harm has been done. Yes, your realization, your awareness certainly ensures that more harm is not being done in that situation. But when another situation comes along, once again, what we do is we automatically react negatively, and once again, the harm is done. JF asks us to, he actually asked me to do this. And he told this to me yesterday. He says, just through the day, make a note of when you automatically react negatively and how many times you are pulling yourself back in order to change your thoughts, in order to change your feelings, words, behavior, etc. I was quite dismayed at how often I had to do this. It was only because JF asked me to be so aware of this that I was aware of every tiny single thought that passed. I was aware of every tiny single change of tone in my voice. I was aware of the fact that even though I was silent, there was a feeling that ran through me. And it was only because JF had asked me to be super aware of this and to keep making a note I was really dismayed at night by this realization. JF says, now, with your kind of awareness, if you are still working through an automatic negative reaction, so many times, more times than you are happy about, then try to understand how often you are responsible for weakening your emotional mental immunity system. Each time the emotional mental immunity system weakens, because the physical and emotional mental are so strongly correlated, a drop in the strength of the emotional mental immunity system leads to a drop in the physical immunity system and leads to a drop immediately. He says very rarely do people realize on certain days when they go to bed extremely exhausted or feeling drained, it has really nothing to do with how much physical work or physical labor or physical exercise you have put in. And he says you are aware of this. There are days when you put in so much physical labor in the kitchen, baking, making pastas, making cakes. You are exhausted, but you are so upbeat. You don't feel drained. And that itself should make you aware that physical exercise, physical labor does not drain you. It can tire your body, yes, but it will not drain you of energy. The only thing that drains you of energy is a weakening emotional mental immunity system. So he draws our awareness to these virus and bacteria that go into this emotional mental system. And I want to ensure that I am not going to miss out on a single one. The first one he says is lack of forgiveness. And JF says lack of forgiveness actually eats away at the energy substance of all three immunity systems. It eats away at the energy substance. He says, if you do not wish to pay attention to any of the other viruses and bacteria and organisms that we are going to name, if you wish to ignore all the others, go ahead. Only work on this one, lack of forgiveness. And he says, let me draw your attention to one fact. Many times, we make ourselves believe we have forgotten, we have forgiven, but we haven't. And he says, how do you know that you haven't? 2 years from the event, while talking about it to someone else, you will experience an uncomfortable or an unpleasant emotion. You will hear your tone of voice change. You will experience your physical body tightening up. All of this is evidence to the fact that you have not forgiven. To forgive, JF says, to forgive means to realize that there is not even an iota of blame to be apportioned. To forgive is to recognize that everything that took place was strictly and exclusively by a soul contract. To forgive is to acknowledge that the person who caused you the discomfort, the pain, the hurt in your physical embodiment is none other than a very, very, very dear soul mate. He says, if you are unable to look at these three pillars of forgiveness and to acknowledge these three pillars 100%, and he says 100%, if you cannot do that, then you have not forgiven, and the lack of forgiveness continues to eat away at your system, at all the three immunity systems. The next ones, he says, resentment, guilt, shame, and fear. He says these four are like deep set infections. He says when you have a very deep set chronic infection, you have to really keep changing your medication, you'll keep changing the energy work that you do, you'll have to do this for a very, very long period of time because the infection has taken root within your physical system. In exactly the same way, resentment, guilt, shame, and fear are like deep set infections. What do? Because they are so deep set and because it takes so long to eradicate these viruses from our emotional mental system, they actually become physical lumps, cysts, and tumors. They become physical lumps, cysts, and tumors. And JF says sometimes the only way to remove them is through actual surgery. And today it made sense to me why. There have been many times when someone says, I have this, doctor says I need to have a surgery. Please, I don't want to have a surgery to remove this cyst or this lump. Please help me. Many times, yes, the help will come. But just as many times, the message will come, surgery is essential. Go ahead and remove this. Today, I understood why. It is these four: resentment, guilt, shame, and fear. And he says the problem is never do they live exclusively on their own. Resentment might bring in shame or guilt, would bring in fear. Fear might bring in something else. So they always live together as a package deal, giving each other strength. So one infection gives strength to the other, the second gives strength to the third to the fourth, and so on. And they keep getting stronger and stronger and weakening our emotional, mental immunity system. JadeFire talks about my love for junk food. I will enjoy a chicken roll. I'll enjoy a hot dog. um, a large bowl of ice cream sundae. And he says, you make such an attempt to stay away from junk food. And he says, many, many, many in your world today are, you know, talking about staying away from junk food and eating healthy. And he says, that's excellent. But he says, what about the junk food that you eat, which feeds your emotional, mental immunity system? And that junk food is, he says, junk information. Junk information. And there are two aspects of junk information that he spoke of. One is gossip. To indulge in gossip is to feed on junk information. He says gossip is never without malice. There is nothing, JadeFire says, there is nothing as just innocent gossip. If you are talking about someone and they are absent, that word, that sentence is most definitely has an underlay of malice. So JadeFire says gossip is the worst food you could feed your emotional, mental immune system. Then he comes to gossip of a different kind. He says, when you read messages that have come to you, you hear people say things on TV, or someone tells you what they have heard. It might be about a politician who is not present in your midst, and you do not know whether this person has heard it from 50 different persons, and therefore there is a complete erroneous interpretation of an event. But you are welcoming that information because it might be information about a person you do not like. He goes on to say, the courts in your land do not permit hearsay evidence. If it is hearsay, it's not permitted in court because you don't have any proof. Says very similarly, follow that for yourself. If it is hearsay, if you do not have proof to back up what has been told to you, then it is your task, A, not to accept that junk information into your system, and definitely not to forward it to another. So JF says, be very careful of the junk information you put into your system. He went on to talk about another aspect of gossip, and I was a bit horrified by this. He says, whether you talk about a person you know or a person you don't know, if you are gossiping, please remember, JF says, you are taking voluntarily, willingly into your system a little part of that same negative energy that you are gossiping about. You are taking it into your system. You are feeding on their energies. So he says, when you gossip about someone, and if you are gossiping, let us say, about their criminal activities, whatever energy within them is making them undertake these criminal activities, those energies, a small part, not a large part, a small part of it comes into you. I was horrified. Why? Because I don't even want a small part of that coming into me. And JF says that is why over years we have repeatedly channeled, do not gossip. If a person is not in your midst, do not speak ill of that person. If it is a fact that you wish to impart to someone else, back it up with proof, with evidence, and then impart that fact. But if it is hearsay, just like the courts of your land, JF says, just like the courts of your land refuse to allow hearsay into court, you too must not allow hearsay to come into your energy system. So these are the viruses and infections that we fight against. But JF says, just as your physical immunity system is strengthened by your exercise, adequate sleep, good food, the vitamins you take in, your emotional mental system is also strengthened by these things. And he says, the first thing he's already spoken of, an automatic positive reaction. He says, cultivate that as a habit. When you have to remind yourself to change your words, when you have to remind yourself to change your thoughts, when you have to remind yourself to move away from fear to faith, you are not following an automatic positive reaction. In fact, what you are caught in is an automatic negative reaction. So the first thing he says that can change this into an automatic positive reaction, which can become a habit. In every situation, turn your attention, turn your focus, turn your mind to your divinity, not to someone else's divinity. He says you might be caught in a situation where it might be difficult for you to, at that time, acknowledge someone's divinity. No problem. But acknowledge your own. He says, as soon as you acknowledge your divinity, automatically your words will change, your thoughts will change, your feelings will change, your attitude will change, your behavior will change. So he says this has to become a habit. And he says, yes, all habits are difficult to break and new habits are very difficult to inculcate. But he said, are you going to fail this challenge? Ask yourself that question. Are we going to fail this challenge? He says it sounds more difficult than it is. Once you train yourself, once you train your energy system to automatically turn to divinity, your divinity, not God, not the divinity of someone else. Turn your attention to your divinity. Remind yourself of your divinity. You will very soon get into this automatic positive reaction. Another thing that strengthens the emotional mental system, and that is gratitude. And JF has made me write this. Everything has the potential to teach you. There is nothing that you face. There is nothing that you encounter. There is nothing that you experience which has come to you for any other reason but to teach you something. Again, he says, if you can remember this, in every situation, your only response will be, thank you for this. Thank you for this. Every time you say thank you move away from the infection of fear to the power of faith. Your emotional, mental immune system gets stronger. That fear infection begins to get weaker. And all because you have learned to say thank you. But he says, how can you say thank you if you rail against someone, if you gossip about them, if you sneer at something? After that, when you say thank you, it has no effect. Thank you must be the first automatic reaction, not a well considered one. So he says, if you can just practice these two things, turning your mind to your divinity and saying thank you will eliminate the infections of resentment, guilt, shame, and fear. And what you will bring in to your system will be the vitamin of faith. Now, he has paid so much attention to this emotional mental immunity system. What happens to the spiritual system? When the emotional mental immunity system is weak, the physical system gets very, very weak. And even though we may chant and pray and use switch words and do meditation in order to eliminate other negative energies like anger and bitterness and malice and envy, we are unable to do this really well because our systems have become weak. A weak physical immunity system and a weak emotional mental immunity system drains the energy of the spiritual immunity system. When the spiritual immunity system is drained of energy, as I said earlier, two kinds of unpleasant energies enter our system, and that is energies of lower realms, which are sometimes known as entities, but more often than even that are energies that are attracted to you. Your rage attracts rage. Your guilt attracts guilt. Your shame attracts shame. Your fear attracts fear. Because your spiritual immunity system has become weak, when these energies, which are always in the universe, right? Because we are constantly emitting them, like us, thousands and millions are emitting them. If we had a strong spiritual immunity system, when these viruses come, the spiritual immunity system would throw them out and say, you cannot enter here. But because it has become a weak spiritual immunity system, because its energies have been drained by a weakened physical immunity system and a weakened emotional mental immunity system, it cannot combat these viruses that come to it. And so rage enters, fear enters, envy enters, jealousy enters, and everything that you are trying so hard to combat. You are using meditation, you are using switch words, you are using mudras, you are using mantras, you are using sacred geometry, you're using everything you possibly know in order to combat these negative feelings and thoughts, are now only empowered by the rage, the fear, the guilt, the shame that is constantly coming in, because your spiritual immunity system cannot stop them. So, if you want to have a truly comprehensively healthy immune system, with every vitamin pill that we take, we must take in far more gratitude. With every burger and pizza that we turn away, we must turn away from lack of forgiveness. JadeFire says spiritual hygiene is far more important than physical hygiene. So let's work on this today. And he is going to give us a very short meditation, which actually is only how to do it. He's not taking us through the meditation. He's only going to explain to us how to do this. So you get into a very calm, meditative state. Breathe in through your nose very deeply, fill yourself, and out through your mouth, emptying yourself completely. And you breathe in this way for about 3 to 4 minutes. You first turn your attention to your emotional, mental immunity system. You can visualize this as a large body of energy that appears before you. Continue to breathe deeply as you are visualizing this. Now, flood this body of energy with the color red. With the command that all energies that weaken the emotional, mental immunity system and align with the color red be healed by this color, and that all help shall be given to you to release these energies peaceably. You can continue to flood the system with the red color for as long as you feel comfortable. You can also choose to, if you want, do one color at a time and come back to the other colors later. But if you should choose to move on, then you flood the emotional, mental immunity system with the orange color. And once again, give the divine command that all energies that weaken the emotional, mental, immune system and align with the orange color be now healed by the orange color, and that all help be given to you to release and let go of all these energies peaceably. Once again, you continue to do this for as long as you should choose. Then you move on to the bright yellow color, then to an emerald green color, then to a turquoise blue color, and last to a sapphire blue color. You can choose to use all the colors, or you can choose one color at a time, whatever you wish. When you have completed clearing the emotional, mental immunity system from your crown chakra, take in white light tinged with both silver and gold. White light tinged with silver and gold. Take in from Mother Earth a deep brown, chocolate colored energy. Both these energies enter your body. By divine command, you send them to your physical immunity system. Heal, repair, restore, strengthen. This is the command that you shall give. Heal, repair, restore, strengthen. Once again, you can do this for as long as you wish. Once you have worked on your physical immunity system, open all your chakras, all 7 chakras to be opened, and the strongest force of energy, the strongest force of divine energy that resides in all the chakras to be sent simultaneously to your spiritual immunity system. Let your spiritual immunity system receive your strongest positive divine energies. And that is why it is important that you work on your spiritual immunity system only after you have worked on the emotional, mental immunity system and physical immunity system. JadeFire reminds us it is not how long we take over each step, it is how strong our intent is. Before you start on this meditation, on this energy clearance, make this firm intent. I will that the emotional, mental immunity system and physical immunity system be cleared of all energies that weaken them, and that they be strengthened and brought to their optimal functioning. I will that the spiritual immunity system be empowered and strengthened so completely that only energies that are positive, that are beneficial to me and for me, shall enter into the spiritual immune system energy space. Make this intention and then start your clearance process. Before we end, JF reminds us this energy work will not work for you if you do not simultaneously inculcate, work upon getting into a habit of automatic positive reaction. He reminds us no matter what the circumstance is, the reaction must be a positive one, because there is no experience, no encounter, and no event that comes to you without having the potential to add something to your knowledge, to your wisdom. Thank you, everyone.